for parenting tips, celebrity interviews, recipes, conversations with experts, DIYs, and lots more. Subscribe to Kids Talk Press now.
So after my first child, I was 28 and I had Nandan. I was in peak form. I danced through my pregnancy. I swam 40 laps and then went into labor. I performed through my pregnancy. But the mistake I did was I went back to the studio 2 months after having him. I think more than to ourselves, it's also because we hear these voices around us telling us that depression, postpartum depression, is nothing but boredom. What do you have to be depressed about? You're fine, your baby is fine. It's not that easy, right? So, and that's the voice. You're being ungrateful. Look at how many people want to have a child and can't have a child. You are being ungrateful. So for me, it was a very humbling experience to know that I cannot always have it together. And then to be kind enough to myself to say, I don't have to have it together. So honestly, nobody, myself included, we all knew about postpartum depression. But nobody, including myself, expected it to hit me.
You continue to dance even after your children. Did you kind of overcompensate to get back to your fitness levels, or did it come very naturally to you? Have you cut down work? Have you increased work?
So after my first child, I was 28 and I had Nandan. I was in peak form. I danced through my pregnancy. I swam 40 laps and then went into labor. I performed through my pregnancy. But the mistake I did was I went back to the studio 2 months after having him. I wish I hadn't done that. I wish I'd been a bit slower, kinder to myself. I bounced back because, 28, 29, you're fit. But it took a toll on my mental health because I used to get terrible pump output. For every rehearsal, I would have to sit and pump for like 3 or 4 sittings, and it was hard. And then, PPD hit me like a ton of bricks. I continued working through my PPD. But this time, after having had that 6-year break, this time was very different. We were in lockdown, so nobody was working. We were all working from home. So I was teaching my Pilates classes or my dance classes. We were recording performances. I had to record a theatre for Jaipur Festival. I had to record a play where I'm playing a woman who's bemoaning the fact that her husband has left her for 14 years, and I'm like 6 months pregnant here. So we have to camouflage my very pregnant belly, and we somehow managed to pull it off. So, I did work through this pregnancy, but not in the sort of, bordering on insecure way that I did during my first. Because I'm like, oh my God, if I leave, somebody's going to take my place.
Yeah.
This time I'm like, you know what? I'm going to leave. I'm going to take a maternity break. And if somebody takes my place, great. There's another place for me. And things have been falling in place a lot. So this time again, I started training I was given the go ahead to train very soon after because I trained through both my pregnancies. My doctor was like, you know what to do? Go, do it. So I started training early. I started teaching also quite early on because everything was online. I could literally latch the baby on and teach a class. I did, by the time he was 3 months old, I was already doing plays because, again, Zoom. We were rehearsing on Zoom and we were in like pretty much, semi-lockdown. All performance venues were locked down completely.
Yeah.
And now that things are slowly opening up at, 25% capacity, 50% capacity, I'm ready to get back out there. So this month we start physical rehearsals. Hopefully after this wave, hopefully. It was supposed to be this month, but now looks like it will be mid-Feb. But anyway, we start physical rehearsals in person after 2 years. And my child will turn 1 by then, and I'm ready to get back there. So this time has been a lot kinder on me and my body. And the recovery has also been very targeted because wisdom of the second time, right?
And Aarabi, you mentioned you had your first one at 28. I had my first one at 27. And I've got to ask you this. Was it a conscious decision to have your kids early?
See, I had been with my husband for 8 years then. I was married. I got married when I was like just turned 25, but we were dating for a while before. And for me, honestly, it was a very detached decision. Because for me, I wanted to finish having my first child by the time I was 30 because I knew that 30 would be like a crucial point in my career where I would no longer be a young and upcoming dancer. I would have to start, singing for my supper, basically, pulling my weight, choreographing things and, focusing. And, you realistically need a year or two to get back into the grind after having your child, right?
Right. And also you mentioned that you went through postpartum depression. So tell me a little bit about that. How did you I'm so glad you mentioned it, because tell me how you identified it. You knew
I
what the
think that
triggers
is
were,
important.
and acknowledge it to yourself, because I think a large part of us, we don't want to say it out loud, especially to ourselves. So
Yes.
how did you go about in that journey?
I think more than to ourselves, it's also because we hear these voices around us telling us that depression, postpartum depression, is nothing but boredom.
Yeah.
What do you have to be depressed about? You're fine, your baby is fine. It's not that easy, right? So, and that's the voice. You're being ungrateful. Look at how many people want to have a child and can't have a child. You are being ungrateful. So that's the constant refrain in your own head, right? So it's very hard to break through that. So for me, I'm like one of those people who always, people expect me to always have it together. I mean, my parents came a week before my wedding. Like they literally landed in Madras a week before my wedding. They said, "Oh, is everything ready?" So that from the age of 12 or 13, I have pretty much made all my decisions. I have been, responsible and accountable for all my decisions. I have had to face my own music. Nobody to bail. No, my parents will be like, if you want us to bail, you are great, but I've never asked them to bail me out. So there was always this misconception that Aarabi always has it together. And for me, I'm like, I got this. I have to always have it together. So for me, it was a very humbling experience to know that I cannot always have it together. And then to be kind enough to myself to say, I don't have to have it together. So honestly, nobody, myself included, we all knew about postpartum depression, but nobody, including myself, expected it to hit me. I don't know when the onset was, but when it peaked was when my child was 6 or 7 months old. Because you're over the new baby rush, you're over the Pinterest new mom rush, and then slowly you see your partner getting back to full time work. His life hasn't altered as much as yours, and he gets to travel on work, and then the rage hits.
Yeah.
I mean, I even remember the day it hit, and it was bad. And even then, everybody was like, "Oh, you're just tired, you're just exhausted, and all that." For me to say, you know what, I'm being a fool. This is postpartum depression. It took a couple of more weeks. But thankfully, I have friends around me who were all, going through a similar experience, and we had each other to sound off, and sort of. And once I realized it, I very quickly sat with my husband, we articulated it, and then and then that's when I have these older cousins and my sister who are always, always sort of watching out for me. So they stepped in and they're like, okay, you know what, we had this too. So this is what we did. So let's get this done. And then, we sort of started having a methodology where I could prioritize myself. And then in a couple of months, as solid dependency increased for Nandan, the time that I could be away started increasing. Things started falling in place. My career was getting back on track. And yeah, but for about 6-7 months, it was really hard.
Right. And I don't know why, whenever we are anxious, we only think of the worst. We never think of the best. It's very sweet.
Very, and also I also feel like this birthing in this pandemic was because every morning I think at that point when I got pregnant, it was a particularly scary time when we woke up to the news of somebody dying literally every day, right?
So
and
this
all of that.
March last year?
Sorry?
March last year?
Arudra was born in January 2021. So I found out about the pregnancy in June 2020. Beginning of, the first wave, peak of the first wave, in fact. Beginning was March, no? So June, July, August was gnarly. And there were no proper protocols in place. Now there are protocols in place. At that point, even if you were COVID positive, nobody knew what to do.
Yeah.
Right? So it was very scary. There were so many unknowns, and the vaccine was like a distant thought at that point.
And when he was born, soon after March, April, May 21 was a disaster.
What's the second wave? Yeah. Oh, good Lord.
Sanity there.
It was crazy because you know what? My grandmother that I'm so close to saw me once when I was pregnant. Like things like that are so hard. And then, like this one part of you, you have a pregnancy after 6 years, right? And unexpectedly, and you remember how joyous your first pregnancy was, family all around you celebrating, and here you are unable to do anything, and feeling like you are being denied of all these wonderful pregnancy experiences. And that's when I'm like, you know what, you're a second time mom, you've already done it once. And then I started reaching out to these. I started writing more about this, and then had these first-time moms reaching out to me and saying, this is horrible. This is my first pregnancy, and I wanted to make this special for myself. And here I am, stuck far away from home. Just my partner and I, we have no idea what to do. Then I'm like, you know what? Now is time for me to be their community.
Yeah.
Because honestly, what they are going through is larger and harder than what I'm going through. I had the chance to do it once. I'm just being greedy. I wanted it a second time too. But it was, and this is what I want to tell every first-time mom who's birthed through the pandemic. I mean, you guys are stars, yeah. I don't know how you all managed to do it the first time with no memory of doing it differently to cling on to.
Yeah.
I think, on behalf of every second or third time parent, I have nothing. I mean, I'm so much in awe of you first-time parents who've managed to survive these last 2 years with your sanity intact.
Right. Thank you so much, Aarabi. It's been incredible. Like I was, of course, I knew some parts, some chapters of that Instagram story. I'm so glad it didn't even feel like I was
the window chapters.
And I didn't even feel like I was chatting with somebody I had never met, never spoken, and just known through Instagram. And it was just so much fun chatting with you.
Thank you. It was lovely. Thank you so much for having me on.